The modern global economy runs on a continuous, massive injection of energy. Every factory floor, every logistics network, and every power grid relies on a flawless, uninterrupted flow of fuel. This animation shows the scale of that flow. 20 million barrels of oil and 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas pass through one specific geographic bottleneck every single day. That bottleneck is the Strait of Hormuz. It is the only maritime exit from the Persian Gulf into the Gulf of Oman, flanked by Iran to the north and east and the Sultanate of Oman to the south. The strait stretches for about 167 kilometers, but its physical constraints are severe. At tightest point, between the Iranian island of Larak and Oman's Greater Coin Island, the waterway shrinks to just 39 kilometers wide. For decades, the macroeconomic stability of the world relied on a very precarious assumption that this tiny strip of water would remain open and peaceful. The reality on the water is even tighter than the map suggests. The deepest channels, the only ones capable of handling fully loaded supertankers, are pushed right up against the rugged, mountainous coastline of Oman. This cross-section shows the actual navigable path. Out of that 39-kilometer gap, the shipping lanes narrow down to just 2 miles in each direction, separated by a 2-mile buffer zone. That is a functional width of barely 4 kilometers for the largest ships. On February 28, 2026, the vulnerability of those 4 kilometers was tested. The United States and Israel launched a coordinated air and missile strike on Iranian military and nuclear infrastructure, known as Operation Epic Siri. Following reports that the strikes killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps immediately retaliated. They declared the Strait of Hormuz a closed military zone. The world's primary energy artery was severed overnight. A geographic bottleneck instantly became a sealed trapdoor. The shutdown began by exploiting a legal gray area. Under a 1982 UN convention, the strait guarantees transit passage, meaning international ships can flow freely. But Iran never ratified that treaty. Instead, they enforce a 1993 domestic law claiming innocent passage, giving them the legal pretext to halt, inspect, or block vessels they consider a security risk. To enforce the blockade, Iran utilized asymmetric warfare. They deployed swarms of cheap, highly maneuverable attack craft against slow, massive commercial vessels. In a space this tight, a massive 200,000-ton supertanker has almost zero room to maneuver or evade an attack. They then saturated those incredibly narrow shipping lanes. Iranian forces planted dozens of Maham-3 and Maham-7 acoustic and magnetic sea mines directly into the 4-kilometer navigable channel, creating an impassable explosive barrier. To ensure the trap worked, they targeted the ship's technology. By actively jamming and spoofing GPS signals, Iranian forces fed false coordinates to incoming vessels, tricking their navigation systems into wandering out of the safe lanes and straight into the minefields. Iran didn't need to match the naval firepower of the United States. They only needed to weaponize the extremely tight physical dimensions of the water itself to trap their enemies. By early March, the strait was a maritime dead zone. Commercial traffic plummeted by 70% within days. At least 12 commercial vessels from various nations were destroyed, and 7 more were abandoned by their crews. This military action immediately triggered an economic blockade. Marine insurance premiums rapidly spiked by up to 600%. To move cargo safely, companies were extorted. Iran established a private lane through its territorial waters, demanding transit fees of around $2 million per ship. The dense geography of the region also exposed the American military footprint. United States forward operating air bases in Qatar, Kuwait, and the UAE, filled with heavy bombers and fighter jets, were sitting squarely within range of Iranian short-range ballistic missiles. Even the headquarters of the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, the central hub for Middle Eastern maritime security, suffered direct hits to its port facilities, severely disrupting logistical support operations. Diplomatic channels quickly broke down. U.S. President Donald Trump issued a series of strict ultimatums, threatening the total destruction of Iranian energy infrastructure if the strait remained closed. But Tehran rejected these demands, viewing the proposed 15-point peace plan as a one-sided attempt to dismantle their defenses. Regional military dominance is not a guarantee of safety when the combat zone is this confined. By late March, the world's most advanced navy found itself effectively checkmated by the unforgiving geography of the water. This chart tracks the immediate global economic shockwave. Brent crude oil prices spiked from around $80 a barrel to $126 by late March. This massive disruption led to diesel shortages across Asia, shutting down gas stations and factory lines in places like Vietnam and Thailand. Look at the secondary data line: European natural gas prices. As Gulf exports vanished, the cost of natural gas in Europe jumped from €30 to over €60 per megawatt hour in a matter of days, immediately threatening heating networks and heavy industry. Desperate to bypass the blockade, the world turned to its land-based backup systems. These alternative routes included the Saudi East-West Petroline running to the Red Sea and the UAE's Habshan-Fujairah pipeline, which pumps oil directly to the Arabian Sea. But this chart illustrates the fatal mathematical flaw in those workarounds. The global market requires 20 million barrels to pass through Hormuz daily. The combined maximum capacity of every available alternative pipeline is roughly 6 million barrels. That leaves 70% of the region's oil completely trapped. And for liquefied natural gas, the situation is worse. Qatar ships over 112 billion cubic meters of LNG annually, and exactly 0% of it has a pipeline alternative. Without the strait, that vital fuel source is entirely cut off. With 14 million barrels of oil and the entirety of Qatar's gas supply effectively trapped, the 2026 crisis exposed the lack of a functional global backup system. The only permanent solution is to bypass the strait. Building a pipeline network capable of linking the fields of Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia to Omani ports like Dukh and Salalah requires thousands of kilometers of new infrastructure, a multi-billion-dollar investment that now looks cheaper than the alternative. For the Asian economies that absorb 80% of this fuel, the blockade is an ultimatum. China, India, and Japan are no longer just exploring nuclear and renewable energy. They are accelerating their adoption to decouple from Middle Eastern geography as quickly as possible. Despite our immense military strength and technological progress, the reality remains unchanged. Until the physical map of global energy is entirely redrawn, the stability of the world economy will remain a hostage to a 4-kilometer strip of water.